Just be seated, please. Detective Murphy, you've previously been sworn in this matter and you continue under oath. You understand that?
Detective Murphy, this morning before we started, present member of the District Office, I told you how we were going to move along through the statement taken by the Bath Police Department, at which you were present, and the statement taken by members of the West Dallas Police Department that was taken and you were present.
That's correct.
And we agreed that we would move through it by going through paragraphs that were not something that you've already testified to pretty fully, correct?
Yes.
Okay. Regarding the Bath Police Department statement, there was a statement taken by the officers from the Bath Police Department on 2 different dates, correct?
That's correct.
When was the first one, please?
July 26th.
Okay. Referring to the second page, page 2 of 8, would you tell us whether or not during the course of the discussion with the officers from the Bath Police Department, there was some photographs of the area where Mr. Dahmer had lived when he was a youngster, and whether or not they were shown to Mr. Dahmer?
Yes, there were photographs and they were shown to him.
Now, did Mr. Dahmer make any admissions, and I'm referring to the first full paragraph, concerning what he did with the sledgehammer? He was questioned about a sledgehammer, correct?
Yes.
Did he use a sledgehammer according to what he told the Bath police officers?
Yes.
Okay. State what he did as it relates to, and I'm referring to the last line of that paragraph. When asked about the name of the man that he had killed, what did he say?
He stated, as I told you, the last name Hicks jogged my memory.
Jogged my memory.
Yes.
And in the next paragraph, what do you do? You show him a photograph of Mr. Hicks, correct?
That's correct.
And how does he respond to looking at that photograph?
He stated, it's been a long time. That could be him. That looks like the guy.
And reading on to the next paragraph, would you continue reading that, please?
Mr. Dahmer was asked to describe the death. He stated that he was not sure of the time, but in the fall, I think, because the weather was still warm. Mr. Dahmer stated he was out of school. The death occurred before he entered the United States Army in January of 1979. He stated he was in the Army until March of 81.
Next sentence, please.
After the Army, he went to Florida from March 81 until October 81. Mr. Dahmer stated he probably checked the woods around his house to make sure human bones were not visible, but didn't remember.
Skipping down then to when it says Jeffrey Dahmer continued, stating, would you continue the next sentence after that?
Mr. Dahmer continued stating, in the early afternoon, late evening, around 5 p.m., he was driving down Cleveland-Massillon Road toward the mall area when he saw a white male, approximately 18 years old, picked up the male and drove past the fire department. He then made a U-turn and went to his house at 4480 West Bath Road. Mr. Dahmer thought at that time he was living on West Bath Road by himself. His father had moved from the residence because of domestic problems to a motel 5 to 10 miles away. His mother had taken his brother and moved to Chippewa Falls, Wisconsin. Mr. Dahmer started talking about buying some pot and something like that with this white male. They had some beers, which were in the refrigerator. Mr. Dahmer stated he didn't think he had sex this time with the person he killed. The guy was sitting there drinking beer in the bedroom area. The male wanted to leave, and Mr. Dahmer wanted him to stay. He stated, I hit him in the head with a pipe from the weight set, parentheses, a barbell. He then strangled the male from the back with the same pipe. Mr. Dahmer stated, I panicked.
Skipping down to a statement asked of him about when was the last time he was in Bath, Ohio. Did he not state it was not since 83 or 84?
Right, he believed it was since 1983 or 84.
Now, when I say skipping the next paragraph, it's because we agreed that it's either been so testified to or it's irrelevant, so we're trying to move it along, correct?
That's correct.
All right. And anything else that you feel is important or counsel does, she'll bring out. Skip the next paragraph and when they asked about whether or not he had ever been talked to when living in Bath by any members of the police department for cutting open dead animals. What did he say?
Skipping that or?
No, reading that
Oh,
part,
okay.
please.
He was asked if he had ever been talked to when living in Bath by any member of the Bath Police Department for cutting open dead animals. Mr. Dahmer stated that no one from the Bath Police Department had ever talked to him about that, but he had experimented with animals dead on the roadway when he was in his middle teens, maybe 15 or 16 years old. He says that's when he began experimenting with roadkills.
Continue on, please.
He stated, my main concern is getting these people identified so this can end for everybody. I want to get them all identified so this can be cleared up from beginning to end. Ohio was the first one, then no more until Wisconsin. I blacked out and it started again.
Next paragraph, please.
Mr. Dahmer recalled working at a Holiday Inn. He was unsure which one right after high school for a short time. He did not remember working while in high school.
On page 4 of 8, on the third paragraph, would you read what he tells those officers in response to their questions, please?
He stated, I can't change the past, that's for sure. I would if I could, but I would have to start many years ago. I can't see any light at the end of the tunnel, but that's my fault.
I would like you at the last sentence on page 4 of 8, to continue reading where he said, he then stated, I know I wouldn't have to identify anyone. See that?
Yes. Mr. Dahmer stated, I know I wouldn't have to identify anyone, but those in the pictures, parentheses, the pictures of victims found in his Milwaukee apartment, but I want to clear everyone, all of them up. I want it to end. It's ironic that it's ending up with Ohio, where the first one was, but this whole thing is ironic.
When he says ending up with Ohio,
That means that identifying Mr. Hicks is about the last thing being done in the form of the identification with the Bath Police Department.
That's correct.
Next paragraph, please.
Mr. Dahmer stated that he learned dismemberment by himself on his own.
Next
He
paragraph.
talked about living in Ohio State dormitories where he was drinking like a fish. He decided to go into the Army. The only opening in the military was in the military police, but he didn't get through police training. The Army then made him a medic, and he went to Texas for training, then to Germany.
Next one, please.
He was asked for a description of the person he killed in Bath, Ohio. Mr. Dahmer replied, It looked like the guy in the photo. That's the best description I can give you. If his name is Hicks, that must be him. He remembered the name because it was the first person he ever killed. Mr. Dahmer stated, you remember your first one.
Continue on, please.
Mr. Dahmer continued to smoke. He appeared relaxed and calm. He once again told how he hit Hicks and strangled him. He stated, I panicked. I took him under the part of the house by the crawl space. I left him there for a day or two. He then dismembered the corpse with a knife and separated the bones at the arms. He stated he did not remember what he did with the knife. He stated decomposition took care of pretty much of the meat. Originally, he put the body parts in plastic trash bags. He buried the plastic trash bags in a drainage pipe in the woods behind the house. Approximately 2 weeks later, he got the bags out. The skin had decomposed, and he used a sledgehammer to break up the bones. He stated the weather was warm when he broke up the bones. He was not real clear on the time frame, but thought it was fall. He knew the weather was warm. He stated when he first picked up the hitchhiker, he discussed smoking pot. He stated he decided to try his homosexual tendencies, but could not because I didn't think the guy was gay.
Continue on.
He described the male hitchhiker as a white male, 18 years old, brownish length, shoulder hair, slim build, a little shorter than him. His weight was about 150 pounds, and he was wearing jeans. He did not remember if he was wearing a shirt while he was walking down the road. He stated he was also wearing tennis shoes. He stated he took the victim's clothing to the location used to burn trash by his father, and this was where he burned the clothing and his identification.
Now, would you go on to page 6 of 8 and start with the paragraph on July the 26th, 1991 at 1:50 p.m. a detective showed Mr. Dahmer a second photograph of Mr. Hicks. Continue on, please.
Mr. Dahmer was shown a second photograph of Stephen Hicks. It was the original photograph provided by the Summit County Sheriff's Office, which was provided by the Hicks family. He looked at this photograph and stated, "Yes, that looks like him. I could make a positive identification from that photo."
Continue on.
Mr. Dahmer stated regarding the accuracy of his identification, he stated, "I'm not doing this to appease you. I want to get it right. I wouldn't do this if I didn't want to do it right." He then initialed the photograph.
Now, continuing on to the last paragraph in that page where he was questioned regarding any dismemberment of animals, would you continue on, please?
He stated between 15 and 16 years of age, he experimented with animals he found dead along the roadway. He did not kill any of the animals. He did experiment 5 or 6 times. He cut the animals open to see what they looked like inside. He recalled one large dog that he took the meat off the carcass. See, some of them he picked up along the roadway while riding on his bicycle.
Okay, now going on to not the next paragraph, paragraph after that. He was questioned about Mr. Hicks. What did he state?
He stated when Mr. Hicks was picked up, he wasn't wearing a shirt. Mr. Hicks didn't look like a street person. Stated when asked why he killed him, he stated, "I didn't want him to leave." Stephen Hicks was sitting in Mr. Dahmer's bedroom chair when he hit him and knocked him out with the pipe. He used the same pipe, a barbell, to strangle Mr. Hicks to death from the back.
And then that paragraph after next were about his driving, please.
He stated he did not drive in the United States Army or when living in Florida or in Milwaukee and never had a Wisconsin driver's license. He could not afford a car. He never lived in the state of Arizona.
I would like you to start with the last sentence on that same page where they started interviewing Mr. Dahmer about the possibilities of his participation in satanic activities.
Mr. Dahmer was interviewed regarding his participation in satanic activities. He stated he never studied Satanism but had an interest in it when he lived in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. He used to have some reading material in Satanism. When interviewed further about what he read, he stated The Satanic Bible, a book by Anthony LaVey. He stated that at the time of the murders, he was relating to the material he read. He stated, "I suppose I related to the 9 satanic beliefs." When asked if this was a cause for the murders, Mr. Dahmer stated, "No, but it probably fueled it. I never had any ritualized rituals."
Next paragraph, please.
He was asked the reason for the murders, what the reason for the murders was, and he stated, "For my own warped, selfish desire for self-gratification." He was asked a second time, and he again stated, "For my own warped, selfish desires for self-gratification."
Next paragraph.
He was interviewed whether or not he had any assistance from anyone in these murders, and he stated no. He had no assistance from anyone in any of these deaths.
That means he did them all by himself.
That's correct.
Next paragraph.
He was thanked for his cooperation in providing the details in the death of Stephen M. Hicks. Advised by Detective Karabasis, the Hicks family would finally know what happened to their son. Mr. Dahmer was asked if it would be necessary to obtain additional information and details after reviewing notes and getting back to Ohio by Detective Muncie, and if he could continue to answer questions. Mr. Dahmer stated that he would continue to cooperate and answer any questions that he would be asked.
Read the next, not the next paragraph or the next one, but the one after that, where the officer assures Mr. Dahmer about Ohio's law.
Mr. Dahmer was assured by the Ohio investigators that Ohio did not have the death penalty in 1978. He replied, "I wish Ohio had the death penalty."
Next paragraph, please.
Mr. Dahmer was told that he probably would have criminal charges filed against him in Ohio, and he replied, "Of course, I understand I will." He then stated, "This whole thing is ironic. It's like it's been orchestrated. It's odd."
And that concluded the interview.
That's correct.
Would you be kind enough then to tell us about the second interview with the Bath Police Department when that took place? Was that on August the 8th, 1991?
I don't have that report here.
Okay.
Yeah, the back of the report.
I've just been given by Ms. White the August 8th interview, and I'd ask you to take a look at that. You're aware of that, are you not?
Yeah.
Yeah, I want you to go to the start of the fourth paragraph on page 1 of 8 concerning Mr. Dahmer being advised regarding a telephone call from Detective Kennedy to the Bath Police Department after conversations with him the previous evening. Would you continue reading there, please?
Mr. Dahmer expressed a willingness to answer additional questions concerning the death of Stephen Hicks. Mr. Dahmer, on August 8th, excuse me, Mr. Dahmer was advised of and waived his Miranda rights. He was also advised that he did not have to answer any questions based on the desire of his attorney. Mr. Dahmer expressed a willingness to cooperate and answer questions regarding the death of Stephen Hicks. He expressed this willingness to cooperate even against the advice of his attorney.
Next paragraph.
After advising Mr. Dahmer of his Miranda rights and the right to refuse additional questions against the advice of counsel, he was asked if he would provide a statement to that effect. Mr. Dahmer indicated that he would and wrote out the following. I, Jeffrey Dahmer, agree on my own free will to talk with Detective Muncie and Karabatsis. I will talk to them against the advice of my attorney. Signed to Jeffrey L. Dahmer, 8891.
And he signed that.
Yes,
And that statement ends, I was advised of my rights.
that's correct.
Okay. Now, I want you to go to the next page and tell us what occurred at that interview, starting what was said in the second last paragraph on page 2, please.
Mr. Dahmer was interviewed regarding the necklace worn by Stephen Hicks. He stated it appeared to be a metal necklace with his old braces on it. I don't remember if it had a metal chain or thread. He stated the necklace probably was a small metal chain because the braces are not that big. Mr. Dahmer was showed photographs taken during the search of the Chahoga River, and he asked if the photographs were on the opposite side of the water treatment plant. He advised the photographs were taken on the opposite side of the water treatment plant. Mr. Dahmer asked if he could better identify the area he threw things into the river. He looked at the photograph and stated, like I said before, I stopped in the middle of the bridge. I didn't throw anything very far, maybe 10 feet out. See, that's all the details I can give you without pictures, with or without pictures.
Would you go to page 4 of 8? And I would like you to start with the last sentence. Jeffrey Dahmer was interviewed regarding his animal experimentation. Last sentence.
Okay. Mr. Dahmer was interviewed regarding animal experimentation in an article that appeared in People magazine. A dead dog impaled on a stick was found in the woods near the Dahmer residence. Mr. Dahmer was shown 2 photocopies provided by the Bath Police Department by a citizen. After these photographs, the citizen stated these photographs were taken in the 1970s. Mr. Dahmer was asked if these photographs looked familiar. He replied, yes, that does. Yes, I think that's it. Mr. Dahmer then discussed some animal experimentation near his home. He stated the photographs were the dog I was talking about. When interviewed about the type of dog in the photograph, he replied, some type of mixed breed. Mr. Dahmer stated he did not kill the animal, but found it on the road dead. He stated that the individual's name sounded vaguely familiar.
Next paragraph.
Mr. Dahmer was interviewed regarding the age he experimented with animals, and he stated 14 or 15.
Next paragraph.
He was questioned regarding how he learned to dismember animals and people. He stated he did not have any training on dismemberment, but described it as gruesome experimentation. He stated, I suppose I did that for whatever reasons. I described dismemberment of animals as more or less trial and error.
Continue on, please.
He was interviewed regarding the dismemberment of Stephen Hicks. He described it as a frantic attempt to undo what I've gotten myself into. Mr. Dahmer stated there was no research into it as far as that goes.
Next paragraph.
He was interviewed regarding his truthfulness with Detectives Kennedy, Karabatsis, and Muncie. He replied that there was no point in any of this if I'm not truthful.
Now, I want you to skip the next sentence, the next paragraph, and go into the next one, leaving out the identity of the person, the citizen whose name is being used there, except that it's about a citizen. Okay?
As he was interviewed regarding a citizen, he stated he did not know anything about the animal experimentation.
That's meaning the citizen.
The citizen, right. They were just drinking and getting the best pot. He stated his life totally revolved around smoking pot, and that the citizen and him were friends part of their junior and senior years in high school.
Now, the time he's talking about his life was about drinking and getting the best pot. He's talking about his junior and senior year of high school.
Yes.
With this citizen.
Yes.
Okay, continue on.
He stated they smoked pot. He stated that when this individual was driving, he would intentionally hit dogs running near the roadway.
His friend.
His friend. He described one day that he was driving with this individual, and this individual killed 6 dogs, or hit 6 dogs 4 times in one day.
Go ahead.
Last one was a beagle puppy. As the beagle puppy was going over the car, Mr. Dahmer described it as, "I've never saw such a look of terror in an animal's eyes. It was sickening." This individual just liked to run over dogs.
His friend.
Like friend.
Go ahead.
He stated he did not know if his friend was a homosexual.
Okay.
Mr. Dahmer was interviewed regarding at least one animal bone with a spike or nail driven through it, which was found during the search of his property in Bath, Ohio. He stated he never drove any nails through animal bones. When interviewed about his animal experimentation, he stated that he never bothered skinning them. He was just cutting their bellies open.
Skip 2 paragraphs and get down to the part where he was being asked questions about his dealings with Mr. Hicks.
He was questioned regarding whether he engaged in any homosexual activities with Mr. Hicks before or after his death. Mr. Dahmer stated that there were no homosexual activities. He stated he did not take any photographs of Stephen Hicks before or after his death. He was interviewed regarding whether or not he drained the blood from Mr. Hicks' body. He stated that during dismemberment, it just soaked into the ground. Interviewed regarding a gold bracelet found during the search of his property in Bath, Ohio, and whether it was worn by Mr. Hicks. He stated it's possible, but I don't remember. He's interviewed regarding whether he or Stephen Hicks were drinking before he killed Hicks. He stated he had at least a 12-pack before he killed Mr. Hicks. He said, "That's basically it. I just didn't want him to leave." He stated it looked like Stephen Hicks was going to some type or from a festival somewhere. I don't know where. He stated Mr. Hicks was drinking. He then stated, "That's where the whole nightmare started. I wish I could turn back the years."
In the next paragraph, there was some discussion asked about Mr. Dahmer with his first homosexual activities or experimentation with another juvenile, correct?
That's correct.
Would you read what he said, leaving out the name of the juvenile?
Mr. Dahmer was interviewed regarding any homosexual activities or experimentation with a juvenile. He stated experimentation was a good way to put it. He was about 14 years old at the time.
Next paragraph.
Mr. Dahmer was interviewed regarding a locked trunk that he kept in his grandmother's house. He stated that most of his possessions were in the trunk. They included a 19-inch television, lamps, porno tapes, and magazines. He was asked if he kept skulls in the trunk. He stated, "I didn't keep them. The big black trunk was used for transporting my property." He kept the trunk locked so that his grandmother would not see the pornographic materials.
Skip the next 3 paragraphs and read what's there, please.
There was some discussion related to the news articles in Jeffrey Dahmer. He stated that news articles were wrong. None of those hate motivated. None was hate motivated. When he killed Stephen Hicks, Jeffrey Dahmer was drinking heavily. He was drinking heavily since 17 years old.
Would you go to the next page, please? I would like you to read what he says in the 3rd paragraph to the Bath officer, please.
He was asked about any other murders he was involved in, or if there were any questions or information this officer forgot to ask him. Mr. Dahmer replied, "I wish there was something else I could tell you, but that's it."
That completed the discussion that he had for the most part with the Bath Police Department, correct?
Yes.
I'd like you to go now to the West Dallas Police Department. And that is the, starting at page 295. I would like you to tell us and read at 3:50 p.m., that's on that page, would you start telling us what is present there, please?
At 3:50 p.m., Lieutenant Reese and Detective Nowak of West Dallas, along with myself, spoke with Mr. Dahmer. He stated that he moved in with his grandmother in West Dallas on South 57th Street in 1981, just before the Christmas holidays. He stated he did yard work for her and she would cook meals for him.
Now, before you go into the next sentence, he began to work at some place soon after living with his grandmother, correct?
That's correct.
And then he goes on to talk about his work with another company in Milwaukee where he started in 84, 85.
That's correct.
Continue on, please.
He stated that he would frequent homosexual taverns in Milwaukee, such as the 219 Club, C'est La Vie, La Cage, and the Phoenix. All bars that are located in the area of South 2nd Street in Milwaukee between Pittsburgh and National Avenue. He stated that the first incident he had at his grandmother's home was in November of 84 or 85. He stated that he was staying at the Ambassador Hotel, 2308 West Wisconsin, with another party. He stated that he was a white male, 5'8", 140 pounds, approximately 25 years old. He was unable to provide us with the victim's name. He stated that he was drinking heavily with this male, and Mr. Dahmer passed out. He stated that when he woke up later in the morning, he found the male dead in his bed. Mr. Dahmer stated that it looked like he beat the male on the chest with his fist due to the injuries the male had. Mr. Dahmer stated he believed that he had a blackout and killed the party.
We know that now is Mr. Toomey, and it was in 1987.
That's correct.
Okay, continue on, please.
He stated that he had trouble with alcohol since he was 17 years old. He had been at the PAW for treatment as an outpatient after he served his jail time for the incident with a minor.
Continue.
He was convicted of sexual enticement of a child on May 24th, 1989, and served 10 months at the Milwaukee County House of Correction, a violation he was arrested for on 9/27/88 by the Milwaukee Police Department.
Go ahead, next one.
He stated that after he found the male dead in his bed, he panicked. He stated that he went to the Grand Avenue Mall and purchased a large suitcase. He then returned to the Ambassador and placed the body inside the suitcase and called a cab. He stated he brought the body to his grandmother's house in West Dallas and placed it in the basement. He was asked why he killed some males and not the others, and he stated, "You can't get a constant supply of sleeping pills." He also stated that the males he did not kill, he was not interested in them. He was asked if he killed only those males that he had feelings for or was attracted to. He stated that this was true. He was asked if it was possible that he wanted a long-standing, loving relationship with those he killed. He stated he did not, but that they only wanted a one-night stand, and some of those he was interested in would give him a time frame. He stated that they would tell him they had to leave by a certain time, and he wanted them to stay.
Detective Murphy, I believe you misread something, and I'd ask you to reread that. I asked Dahmer if he killed only those males that he had feelings for and was attracted to. He stated that was true. I asked Dahmer if it was possible that he wanted a long-lasting, loving relationship with those he killed. He stated he did. I think you said he did not. It says he did.
Yes.
Right? But they only wanted a one-night stand, and some of those he was interested in would give him a time frame. He stated they would tell him that they had to leave by a certain time, and he wanted them to stay. Have I read it correctly?
That's correct.
All right, continue in the next paragraph.
He stated that none of his victims were known to him. He stated he met them on the same night that he killed them.
Skip the next two paragraphs and go on to what he said concerning the Flowers incident.
Mr. Dahmer was questioned about the incident with Mr. Flowers. He stated that he had met Flowers at a bar in Milwaukee, and then they later both consented to go to Dahmer's grandmother's home in West Dallas. He stated once at the home, they went into the basement and may have had sex. He stated he recalls giving Flowers 12 sleeping pills. At that time, Dahmer was being prescribed a sleeping pill. Mr. Dahmer stated he gave Flowers 12 tablets as he was a large person. He also stated that he performed oral sex on Flowers after he was drugged. He stated he never intended to harm or kill Flowers. He wouldn't kill Flowers as he was not attracted to him. He stated that he had many encounters with men that he never intended to harm or kill. He stated that he had put sleeping pills in Flowers' rum and coke drink. He stated that it may have been coffee. His reason for drugging Flowers was that it was getting late and he was not sure if he would consent to sex or not. He admitted taking $80 from Mr. Flowers' wallet. He stated that he may have also taken a gold chain, and if he did take the chain, he does not have it any longer. He probably threw it away. He denied taking more than $80 and did remember Mr. Flowers having other money in the wallet. He stated that his grandmother did see the two of them in the basement together. He recalled her being upset over this and her telling him that Flowers had to leave as he was not allowed to have guests in the home. He stated that he walked Flowers to the bus stop on 57th and Lincoln. He stated that Flowers was still very groggy when he put him on the bus.
Now, I'd like you to move on, skip the next 2 pages and go to page 385, I think 385. Why he did not kill Flowers like the rest. At the bottom of that page, you see that?
Yes.
Would you read that paragraph, please?
He was asked why he did not kill Flowers like all the rest. He stated that Flowers was too big, not his type, and would have created too much noise.
Going on to the next page, and in the middle of the page, Dahmer was informed that we wanted to speak with and attempted to confirm the identity of the last victim. Would you read that?
He stated that every day he had been thinking about ways he could help us identify the victim. He stated that he wanted to do this to assist us and to make it easier on the families. He stated he did recall his victim having a slight mustache and an appendectomy scar on his stomach. He stated that when he first viewed the photo array, which included a photo of Mr. Dockstader, something clicked with him. He stated that he was unsure of making a positive identity at the time as he recalled the victim looking older. He stated he is now 75% sure of the identification based on the photograph. He also stated, referring to the photograph, he is the closest I've seen. Regarding the identity of Mr. Dockstader as the last victim, Mr. Dahmer stated, we should go with him, and he's probably the one, and also stated, I'm sure he's the one.
Okay. Would you now go to, I don't have a page number on here, so if I may approach Detective Murphy and show him on.
Mr. Dahmer stated that in between the killings, he was involved in numerous one-night stands with several males. He was asked why he killed some males and not the others. He stated, you can't get a constant supply of sleeping pills. He also stated that the males he did not kill, he was not interested in. He was asked if he killed only those males that he had feelings for or was attracted to. He stated that this was true. He was asked if it was possible that he wanted a long-lasting, loving relationship with those he killed. He stated that he did, that they only wanted a one-night stand, and some of those he was interested in would give him a time frame. He stated that he would tell them they had to leave by a certain time, and he wanted them to stay. I believe that's the same one.
Okay. Is that just a remark?
Right.
Is that true of the rest of the pages that I asked you to take a look at? That all been read by you?
Yes.
Okay. So everything that I marked on those pages has already been read?
Yes.
Okay. Now, at this juncture, Your Honor, for the record, I would like to move for receipt now. The defendant's exhibit number 1, which I think has already been resolved with receipt, but now we have USB to I have, Your Honor, they have been blacked out, and the portions of the thought being material relevant by I would ask that I present to the clerk now marked as defendant's exhibit 1A and be substituted for defendant's exhibit 1. And as to the part that has been read this morning, we will inform that as these others and ask later to have that in the, as part of the defendant's certificate.
Your Honor, Mr. Boyle informed me this morning, actually a few minutes before we started, what he was taking out. There were a couple of things that he didn't go into, just some brief paragraphs that I am going to go into. But beyond that, no objection. I'm not conceding that I went through the entire document with him. At this point, there are just one or two paragraphs that I will be going into that he did not.
Now, I just
Are
have
those paragraphs in 1A or?
They are, those were not ones he went into, and I don't know if he intended to.
They have not been stricken from 1A, so that 1A is.
I don't know if he has already conformed a copy
have not.
yet or not.
I have
If he
not.
hasn't conformed a copy, then they have not been stricken yet.
it hasn't been stricken until,
Okay, why don't we wait until, you've made your motion to receive it in evidence. But why don't we wait for the court's ruling until the state is prepared to advise the court that they can stipulate to all
fine.
periods.
you mark it. I'm going to show you Detective Mark Murphy, what has been marked as defendant exhibit number 26 by identity. I might inform you, Your Honor, that this is only for the purposes of foundation. And I'm going to ask Detective Murphy a few questions concerning that document for foundation purposes. Detective Murphy, sometime back, I presented to the Milwaukee Police Department some portions of of what's in the document 26, correct?
That's correct.
And what that was the attempt of myself and my office to understand what various things Mr. Dahmer did according to the confession that was taken by yourself and West Dallas and Bath.
Yes.
And you've had that.
Yes, I do.
There are 26 some categories that are broken down into in that regard, are there not?
That's correct.
And you had a chance to look at our attempts to try and have that conform to the confession.
Yes, I did.
I'm not asking you if it does or does not. I'm just asking you that clearly was told to you via our attempt, correct?
That's correct.
Then also in that document, as explained to you, was the same information that we received from Mr. Dahmer after talking to him ourselves.
Yes.
And that's also in there.
Yes, excerpts of that.
And I'm not asking you whether that's true or incorrect. I just want to lay the foundation for what's in the document, correct?
That's correct.
And then there's a computer printout of the 26 categories.
That's correct.
And that's our attempt to show the difference or it's our attempt to show what was said to you and what was said to us on a category by category basis.
Yes.
Now, I want to ask you whether or not, just on the information you know from your investigation of the Dahmer matter and based upon what he told you, were any victims of Mr. Dahmer's murders tortured before death?
None that I know of.
Yeah, I'm going to object to the phrase of that question. He said, based on your investigation and what we told you.
No, I don't think I did. I didn't mean to say that. I apologize. I'll withdraw the
I thought
question.
that's what he did. Thank you.
Did Mr. Dahmer and you discuss whether or not he tortured anyone before death?
Yes.
And how many people did he tell you he tortured before death?
None.
Was your investigation show that he was not telling you the truth when he told you that?
No.
So he was, as far as you know, that was a truthful statement.
That's correct.
How many of the people that he killed did he drug before death?
All but one.
And which one did he not drug before death?
Mr. Hicks.
As far as what was the method of death that he employed in all of the murders, and tell us how many of whatever it was and how many he employed one thing as opposed to another. Understand my question?
Yes. The method of death in all the murders was strangulation, except for one where he cut his throat.
All strangulation.
Yes.
What method of strangulation?
Either manually with a strap, and in one case, the barbell.
Can you tell us how many of these victims did he keep body parts of?
Kept body parts. He kept the 7 skulls, forehead, hearts of 2 victims, bicep,
When did he start?
genitals of 2 victims, hands, his scalp, and pieces of flesh from another victim in the freezer.
The place of death? Where was the place of death?
Either one case in the Ambassador Hotel, the rest, 3 at his grandmother's, and the rest at his apartment in Milwaukee and 1 in Bath, Ohio.
How about photos of the parties both before and after death?
He took photos of 12 victims, some just before death. I mean, 1 just before death, the rest were all after death.
Can you tell us when he started taking photos?
From his, he started keeping photos from the 5th victim on. He took photos earlier but disposed of them.
How about the first time you started keeping body parts?
That was Mr. Sears.
And that was victim number?
Going with Mr. Hicks, it was victim number 5.
There was various types of sex both before and after death with all of the parties, was there not?
Yes, there was sex before, and before death was 14, after death was 5.
When did he start eating body parts?
With victim number 6.
When did he first start drilling, using a drill relative to any of the victims? What victim was that?
Mm-hmm. I'd have to check, see which victim.
Please.
Mr. Victim Errol Lacey, that was victim number 11. Errol Lindsay, victim number 11.
Let me ask you this question. How many, based upon your knowledge and experience as a Milwaukee detective in the homicide division, how many of these murders would have been left unsolved, completely unsolved, had Mr. Dahmer not confessed to the same?
Object, all speculation.
Can you tell us at the time that you were talking to Mr. Dahmer, how many people, identity did you know that he had killed prior to his telling you the identity of the person?
On the initial
Yes, sir.
interview, we had no concrete evidence of any of the victims aside from the body parts we had recovered at the time I started to talk to him.
At the time that Mr. Dahmer admitted to you his killing as to each and every victim, did you know, or was there other evidence that you knew of that caused you to believe that Mr. Dahmer had been responsible for that killing?
Yes,
As you were talking to Mr. Dahmer, he was providing you with corroboration that, in fact, the person whose name you were bringing to his attention was, in fact, someone he had killed.
that's correct.
That's all I have. Thank you.
Cross-examination. You want me to move this?
Detective Murphy, starting with that last point, at the time of the beginning of this investigation, 7 skulls and 4 heads had been found in Mr. Dahmer's apartment, correct?
That's correct.
And to your knowledge, identification by dental records was ultimately made on all of those, correct?
That's correct.
And in addition, the 12th victim, I believe it was Mr. Thomas, Mr. Dahmer had a photo of him after Mr. Dahmer had killed him, and it was obvious from the photo that he'd been killed in the photo, and we were able to obtain an identification of him from the family, correct?
That's correct.
Right. But Mr. Dahmer was cooperative in getting identifications of these people, correct?
Yes, he was.
Right. Let's go back to the beginning of this rather long interview you had with Mr. Dahmer. It was by the 24th that he described 17 different homicides in which he'd taken place, correct? In which he'd taken part, correct?
Yes, that's correct.
Right. And from that time on, no additional homicides were admitted to by Mr. Dahmer, correct?
That's correct.
And from your investigation, you had no reason to believe he was involved in additional homicides by the end of this investigation, did you?
No, he did not.
Now, Mr. Boyle indicated that Mr. Dahmer in his cooperation was a rarity. Haven't you had other people cooperate with you?
Yes, I have.
Have you ever talked to anyone, however, over this extensive a period of time?
No, I have not.
And that's because of the number of homicides he was involved in?
Yes.
What was it like to be in the Milwaukee Police Department during this period of time as far as other jurisdictions asking you for information?
We had hundreds of calls from jurisdictions all around the world requesting information or asking us questions to put Mr. Dahmer, whether or not he was in their location, he was around their area at the time they had either missing persons or homicides that were unsolved.
And because of that, even though by the second day you were aware there were 17 homicides, you needed to check out these additional details.
That's correct.
And that's why the conversations with Mr. Dahmer took so long.
Yes.
All right. Now, Mr. Boyle also indicated that you had no reason to doubt Mr. Dahmer when he indicated that these crimes were not racially motivated or against people with a particular sexual preference, correct?
That's correct.
Did you have any reason to doubt Mr. Dahmer when he said that he chose not to kill people when he ran out of drugs?
No, I did not.
Did you have any reason to doubt Mr. Dahmer when he said he chose not to kill those that he didn't like or he wasn't attracted to?
No, I did not.
Did you have any reason to doubt Mr. Dahmer when he told you that these homicides only occurred when he had time to do it, like a day off from work?
No, I did not.
Did you have any reason to doubt Mr. Dahmer when he told you that he chose victims who didn't have cars so he wouldn't have that piece of evidence to get rid of?
No, I did not.
Did you have any reason to doubt Mr. Dahmer when he said that he actually didn't want to kill, so he used alcohol to make himself able to kill?
No, I did not.
Did you have any reason to doubt Mr. Dahmer when he told you in one of his early statements that his motivation for killing one person he drugged was because he was afraid that person would wake up and, in his words, be pissed off?
No, I did not.
Do you have any reason to doubt Mr. Dahmer when he told you that on numerous occasions he'd had sexual involvement with other men and no violence and no drugging had taken place?
No, I did not.
Did you have any reason to doubt Mr. Dahmer when he told you that at the Ambassador Hotel, he had drugged 4 or 5 people, but there was no violence involved as there was with Mr. Twomey?
No, I did not.
Did you have any reason to doubt Mr. Dahmer when he told you about an incident with a juvenile? He's been referred to before by the initials LP. where because he got to know this individual over 2 periods of time, he wound up not killing him.
No, I did not.
Now, interestingly enough, in that case, Mr. Dahmer gets to know the person and doesn't kill him, correct?
That's correct.
And yet he later says he wanted a loving relationship with these people, but they didn't, and so he killed them?
Yes, he did.
Let's talk about Mr. Dahmer and 2 incidents that you've described. One, Ronald Flowers, and one, Anthony Sears. Both of these people were brought back to his grandmother's house in West Dallas, correct?
That's correct.
Did Mr. Dahmer tell you in the case of Ronald Flowers that prior to leaving his grandmother's house, he crushed up the sleeping tablets for whatever person he might meet and bring back to his house?
Yes, he did.
Did he tell you in the case of Anthony Sears that prior to leaving his grandmother's house, he crushed up the sleeping tablets for whatever person he'd bring back?
Yes, he did.
In the case of Ronald Flowers, did he tell you that he had the cab drop them off some distance from his grandmother's house so he couldn't be connected with a specific address?
Yes, he did.
In the case of Anthony Sears, did he tell you that he had the person that gave them a ride there drop him off several blocks away from where his grandmother's house was so he could not be connected with a specific address?
Yes, he did.
In the case of Ronald Flowers, did he tell you he brought Ronald Flowers back to his grandmother's house and drugged him and Ronald Flowers passed out?
Yes, he did.
In the case of Anthony Sears, did he tell you that he brought Anthony Sears back to his grandmother's house and drugged him and he passed out?
Yes, he did.
His grandmother saw Ronald Flowers, correct?
That's correct.
Ronald Flowers, because his grandmother saw him, remained alive, according to Mr. Dahmer, correct?
That's correct.
Anthony Sears died, correct?
That's correct.
Now, at one point in the last West Dallas statement, he said he wasn't as attracted to Ronald Flowers, correct?
Yes, that's correct.
However, he also told you about an earlier victim, David Thomas, who he said he killed and also said he wasn't my type, didn't he?
Yes, he did.
You talked to Mr. Dahmer on 13 different days and multiple times on those days, correct?
Yes.
About how many hours total?
Approximately 60 hours total.
At any time, did Mr. Dahmer appear to be having any hallucinations?
No, he did not.
Any delusions?
No, he did not.
Was he ever incoherent?
No, he wasn't.
Did he ever have unconnected or rambling thoughts?
No, he didn't.
Were his thoughts ever racing?
No, they weren't.
Was he ever in a stupor?
No, he wasn't.
Was he ever unresponsive?
No, he wasn't.
Was he ever out of touch with reality in any way you could detect?
No, he wasn't.
As he got to know you, did Mr. Dahmer relax more?
Yes, he did.
He was cooperative throughout this?
Yes.
As he relaxed more, did he occasionally smile or something would come up that he'd actually laugh about?
Yes.
Was it like having a conversation with anyone, just about anyone else?
Yes, it was.
Except you were talking about some very strange things.
That's correct.
Now, Mr. Boyles indicated that on previous occasions, or that Mr. Dahmer was extremely cooperative, correct?
That's correct.
And in your 24 years with the Milwaukee Police Department, you've talked to other people who've been very cooperative, correct?
Yes, I have.
Some who have committed one or more murders, correct?
That's correct.
Some who have committed a whole series of other crimes, robberies, armed robberies, as many or more of those types of crimes as Mr. Dahmer, correct?
Yes,
However, you've never talked to anyone who's killed 17 people
that's correct.
or admitted to you that they've killed 17 people.
That's correct.
In talking to Mr. Dahmer, you were trying to find out what he done in regard to these people, correct?
Yes,
Was he able to describe the detail and extent of his planning?
yes, he was.
Was he able to describe the lengths he went to in getting rid of the evidence?
Yes, he was.
Now, Mr. Dahmer actually told you at one point, didn't he, that his confidence that he wouldn't be caught increased as he noticed his ability to bluff doctors, fool police officers, and even fool members of his family when they'd question him about what was going on, didn't he?
That's correct.
And in fact, he said he felt he had the ability to make people see only what he wanted.
That's correct.
Did Mr. Dahmer tell you that his motivation was to gain control in these situations?
Yes,
In fact, he told you that the reason he started using drugs was because he wanted control of a sexual encounter with another human being, and he didn't want to have to put up with what they might want to do, correct?
that's correct.
In fact, go back to Mr. Boyle indicated about Mr. Dahmer's cooperativeness. He also, at this point, because of the nature of his crimes and the fact that so many people were contacting you, anytime Mr. Dahmer contacted the Milwaukee Police Department, there was a response. People had to come because of the investigation to speak with him, correct?
Yes, that's correct.
Detective Murphy, he was actually controlling your time too, wasn't he?
Yes, he was in a sense.
Let's go to one other thing that was referred to, or that's in Exhibit 1A. I believe there was some discussion during one of the Bath, Ohio interviews, some significant discussion that Mr. Dahmer had about his concern, because he has a nicotine habit, about the fact that he's far more relaxed and needs to be able to smoke cigarettes, correct?
Yes,
And during that interview with the Bath, Ohio Police Department, it was brought up a number of times, and his indicating, I believe at one point, just say, I believe he said, and it's quoted, "I wouldn't be so insistent, but I know this is the last time to have a few cigarettes. This is a high stress time for me." That would be on page 4 of 8 in the interview of July 26th, correct?
that's correct.
And I believe in the same interview, he said, and this is on page 3 of 8, "I will go into more detail with you if I get some smokes. I know you've come all the way to come all the way from Ohio, and it doesn't make sense that you won't let me smoke. That will be the thing that makes this much easier for me. I know it sounds like a trivial thing, but when you don't have anything else to hold on to, I've been smoking since I was in the Army, correct?"
That's correct.
Now, most of the later interviews occurred over at the Milwaukee Police Department through an order to produce, correct?
That's correct.
And when he'd contact you, Mr. Dahmer was allowed to smoke, correct?
That's correct.
And one of the reasons that the Milwaukee Police Department wanted that was because you were seeking information for yourself and other jurisdictions. And if he was more cooperative when he smoked, that was to your benefit too, correct?
That's correct.
May I just have a moment? Now, it's clear you've been a Milwaukee police officer for 24 years.
Yes,
And in that period of time, you've talked to any number of people,
that's correct.
victims of crimes,
Yes,
witnesses to crimes,
yes,
people who have committed crimes,
yes,
and you've spent a significant period of time with Mr. Dahmer.
yes.
After this long period of time with Mr. Dahmer, did you come away with any reason at all to doubt his ability to know right from wrong?
No, I did not.
And in fact, he specifically told you he knew right from wrong, didn't he?
Yes, he did.
And did you come away with any reason at all to doubt Mr. Dahmer's ability to control his conduct?
And I'm gonna object to the form of that question. It has no foundation to render that type of medical psychiatric opinion without a better foundation.
Let me phrase it this way. In the way Mr. Dahmer described what he had done, did he describe conduct which, from your experience and knowledge, was controlled?
Yes, he did.
Did he ever give a reason for why he killed so many people?
Yes, he did.
And what was that reason?
For his own warped, selfish desire for self-gratification.
But Mr. Dahmer was cooperative, correct?
Yes, he was.
And in that cooperation, he identified the people that had killed, one in Ohio and specifically 16 in Wisconsin. 15 he was charged with, and one he could not recall specifically how the person died, and therefore was not charged.
That's correct.
Show you what's been marked with exhibits 2. We ask you to identify who that photograph of.
This is a photograph from Stephen Toomey from the Ambassador Hotel.
Mr. Dahmer's second. Mr. Dahmer's second.
Yes,
With a break.
the photograph of James Dockstead.
Well, for the record, this has been brought to my attention that counsel have pictures of all these victims, and they are marked individually. They're now being shown to the jury without their first being received in the evidence. I have no objection to all of the pictures being received in the evidence. I have no objection to them being shown to the jury. Counsel indicated she was going to ask the court to allow them to be published. I have discussed that with my client. I have told him that I see no basis to object to those pictures being received of these victims. And if the court feels it appropriate, I have no objection to them being published to the jury. So I will stipulate that the exhibits that Ms. White has showing to Detective Murphy are the pictures of the individuals that have been victimized, Mr. Dahmer, and I have no objection to them being published. Is that right, Mr. Dahmer? Did I not discuss that? Yes.
My suggestion is we do it this way because we have to make a record of what exhibit represents what person. You think the district attorney could simply indicate for the record what the exhibit number is and who the individual is that picture represents. Mr. Boyle, then I can inquire of you whether or not you stipulate to that.
No problem. The only reason I did what I did was when Detective Murphy was turning around, he was showing them before they've been received. I want to make sure the record's clear. I don't have any objections.
We have to go through the mechanics of making the record.
Okay.
Ms. White, do you want to indicate with each exhibit who it represents?
Okay, first I'd just like to have Detective Murphy, you went through these photographs, correct?
Yes, I did.
And in each case, you identified the photo as the person being appeared on the back.
Yes, I did.
And that was for your identification.
Yes, it was.
Your Honor, this point, pursuant to counsel's stipulation, I move into evidence and ask to have it passed to the jury for publication.
Just one second.
All right, state exhibit 2.
And that is the picture of.
Stephen Wise. Yes.
Say. Proceed.
State exhibit 3.
Picture of James Dockstead.
No objection.
Proceed.
State exhibit 4.
Picture of Richard Guerrero.
No objection.
Proceed.
State exhibit 5.
Picture of Anthony Sears.
No objection.
Proceed.
State exhibit 6.
Picture of Raymond Smith.
No objection.
Proceed.
State exhibit 7.
Picture of Edward Smith.
No objection.
Proceed.
State exhibit 8.
Picture of Ernest Miller.
No objection.
Proceed.
State exhibit 9.
Picture of David Thomas.
No objection.
Proceed.
State exhibit 10.
Picture of Curtis Strotter.
No objection.
Proceed.
State exhibit 11.
Picture of Errol Lindsay.
No objection.
Proceed.
State exhibit 12.
Picture of Anthony Hughes.
No objection.
Proceed.
Exhibit 13.
Picture of Conorak census and phone.
No objection.
Proceed.
State exhibit 14.
Picture of Matt Turner.
No objection.
Proceed.
State exhibit 15.
Picture of Jeremiah Weinberger.
No objection.
Proceed.
State exhibit 16.
A picture of Oliver Lacey.
No objection.
Proceed.
State exhibit 17.
A picture of Joseph Radoff.
No objection.
Proceed.
Your Honor, at this point, I have to briefly publish the adjournment.
I take it from what you said before, Mr. Boyle, you have no objection.
I have no objection to that, Your Honor.
You may do so.
Detective Murphy, the appropriate names are on the back of each of those exhibits.
That's correct.
Thank you, Your Honor. I have no further questions. Thank you, Mr. Boyle.
Mr. Boyle?
I have a few. Have you ever refused to allow a person that you were questioning cigarettes if they asked for them, coffee if they asked for them, or food if they asked for them?
No.
It's part of the police procedure taking a statement from anyone, and especially a confessing suspect, to make sure they're as relaxed as possible.
That's correct.
You wouldn't take a statement from somebody who was very, very nervous or somebody who was intoxicated or coming out of intoxication, would you?
No.
So when Mr. Dahmer asked for whatever he asked for, you provided him with it.
Yes.
It became pretty clear that Mr. Dahmer at all times indicated to you a desire to smoke when he was talking to you.
Yes.
Told you it relaxed him.
Yes.
Now, one of the things that I neglected to do in my direct examination, I told counsel I was going to do it, just so the record is clear for future questions. There was hundreds of photographs taken, both of the crime scene,
Yes.
pictures that Mr. Dahmer had. They were brought in by the Milwaukee Police Department, correct?
That's correct.
And for the purpose of the record, Your Honor, at some juncture, I will merely have them marked so that they may be in the record in case they're referred to by any subsequent witnesses. I'm not certainly indicating I'm going to ask for any of them to be received, but it was agreed upon that we would do this so that in future questions there wouldn't be a foundation problem. Right? Did I say that right, Ms. White?
That's correct. We agree that hundreds of photographs were taken in this case and made available to the defense, and the state obviously had them for whatever use was necessary.
Did I make the statement correct, Detective Murphy?
Yes.
Pictures taken out of his house, pictures that he took of his pictures that he took of dead bodies,
That's correct.
and people who were alive before he killed them,
Yes.
and also pictures that the police department would take showing everything they could possibly think is of importance at that crime scene, right?
That's correct.
Now, Ms. White asked you some question about Mr. Dahmer was controlling your time. You didn't have any problems with that, did you?
No, I did not.
In other words, you've had cooperative defendants in the past. How many times have you ever had a person call you asked to see you and said, I want to talk to you even against the advice of my attorney? How many times has that happened in your career as a police officer?
A few times, I don't recall how many.
Very rarely. Half a dozen?
For the amount of people that I've talked to, you could consider it rare, yes.
Half a dozen?
I couldn't put a number to it.
But not very many.
Not too often, no.
Now, there was a question about whether or not Mr. Dahmer ever told you that he was hallucinating or that he had heard strange voice. He never told you anything like that at any time during that 60 hours, true?
That's correct.
Did he at any time, in your opinion, act as though he was making anything up?
No.
You didn't tape his discussions, did you?
No, it did not.
There's no phonographic recording of them.
No, there isn't.
There is no other type of other than your typewritten notes. We have no other record of his discussions with you, Detective Kennedy, and the other officer, correct?
That's correct, other than our notes and our recollections.
Sure, I understand. Question that. 60 hours, you had not put down every single solitary question and answer on paper that was asked of Mr. Dahmer during that 60 hours.
No, we didn't.
Of course. You had to make judgment calls as to what was important, sufficiently important that you put it down when you thought it was. Things that weren't important, you did, right?
That's correct.
That's normal police procedure.
That's correct.
That's all I have. Thank you.
Detective Murphy, based on all your training and experience in 24 years in the police department and the nature of this case, you tried very hard to record everything you heard that was of any importance, didn't you?
Yes, we did.
Nothing further.
I have nothing further.
Okay, you may step down, sir. This time we'll take a recess.
I would just like to inform, of course, my next witness has been summoned. We'll probably take 10 or 15 minutes tops, and we'd be prepared to go. Okay?
It'll be 15 minutes. It might be a little longer, Mr. Boyle, because the court has some phone calls that have to be made concerning some other matters.
Yes, sir.
Court, please.
All right, please.